Before you judge today by yesterday, pause. This moment is not carrying your past unless you ask it to. You are waking into a clean breath, a new rhythm, a chance to speak life differently. Whatever happened before now does not get to decide what begins here. Some mornings arrive heavy. Old thoughts return before your eyes fully open. Regret, pressure, the quiet feeling that you're already behind. If this is you, listen gently. That weight is learned, and what is learned can be released. You do not start fresh by fixing everything. You start fresh by changing the first conversation you have with yourself. One sentence spoken with kindness can interrupt years of self-criticism. The mind listens most when it first wakes. Notice how your body feels right now. Tight, guarded, expecting effort. That is not who you are, it's just how you've been taught to begin. When you speak safety instead of urgency, the body responds immediately. Relief doesn't need time, it needs permission. Here is a truth you may not have considered. Every morning is neutral until you label it. The day does not wake up against you. It waits for instruction. And the words you repeat become the direction it follows. If you've told yourself, "I missed my chance," or "I should be further along," those phrases have been practicing in you. Repetition works, whether the words are loving or not. That's why starting fresh is not about willpower, but about choosing a new sentence. There is a cost to skipping this moment. When you begin the day unconsciously, yesterday repeats itself. The same reactions, the same tension. But when you begin deliberately, something subtle shifts. You respond instead of react. You move instead of brace. Listen now as though your own cells are listening, because they are. The body believes what you say repeatedly. That's how stress settles in. And it's how peace returns. One phrase, one breath, spoken daily. You don't need to believe every word yet. Just be willing to repeat it. Willingness opens the door. Consistency walks you through it. Fresh starts are built, not forced. So stay here. Before the world rushes in, before old stories speak, repeat what you are about to hear as if it were true, because the moment you allow it, you may begin again today. I wish to begin by directing your attention to a moment so ordinary that most people overlook its power entirely. This moment occurs before the body rises, before the mind accepts its first duty, before the world presents its demands. It is the instant when consciousness returns and the day has not yet been claimed by habit. In this moment, the past stands waiting at the threshold, seeking permission to enter again. Whether it succeeds depends entirely upon what you allow to pass. The past does not return by force. It returns by familiarity. Old thoughts arrive not because they are true, but because they have been repeated so often that the mind recognizes them as customary visitors. Regret, self-criticism, pressure, and fear all learn the path to the morning mind through repetition alone. If they are admitted without question, the day begins as a continuation rather than a beginning. Most people believe yesterday controls today because they feel the same weight upon waking. They assume this weight is proof of reality. In truth, it is proof of training. The mind has been taught to resume where it left off, much as a machine resumes motion when power is restored. Without intervention, it will always do so. The morning, then, is a gate. Through this gate pass thoughts that will shape conduct, tone, and expectation for the next many hours. Whoever stands guard at this gate determines whether the day is truly new or merely a repetition with different events. This is not philosophy. It is observation confirmed through long study of human habit. I have seen men rise from failure, disgrace, and loss, not because circumstances changed first, but because they learned to deny the past entry at this gate. They did not argue with it, they did not condemn it, they simply refused to permit it to govern the present. This refusal, practiced daily, rebuilt fortunes and character alike. The past relies upon one ally above all others, unconsciousness. When the mind awakens without direction, it reaches backward automatically. Memory supplies identity, and identity supplies expectation. Thus, a man who failed yesterday expects failure today, not because failure is inevitable, but because the mind has not been instructed otherwise. This is why effort alone cannot produce a fresh start. A man may work harder, plan more carefully, and resolve more fiercely, yet still feel the same heaviness each morning. He is attempting to change results without changing entry. The gate remains unguarded. The past walks in freely. Men of achievement understood this law intuitively, even if they never named it. They guarded the morning. Some did so through quiet reflection, others through deliberate statements spoken inwardly. All did so by refusing to begin the day in reaction to yesterday's emotion. Consider a man who has lost money, reputation, or confidence. If he awakens rehearsing loss, he carries it into posture, voice, and decision. Others sense it immediately. Opportunity avoids him not out of cruelty, but because his manner signals defeat. The day answers the tone he brings. Now consider the same man who awakens and refuses to rehearse loss. He does not pretend victory. He simply denies defeat, permission to speak first. His posture changes. His tone steadies. Others respond differently. The day answers a different signal. This is how renewal begins, not with denial of facts, but with refusal to grant them authority over the present. Authority belongs to what is repeated, not to what occurred. When this is understood, the past loses much of its power. Many people attempt to forgive the past emotionally. Forgiveness is helpful, but it is incomplete if the habit of repetition remains. The mind may say it has forgiven, yet still rehearse the same self-judgment each morning. True release occurs when repetition ends. Ending repetition begins at the gate. I have observed that men who rebuilt their lives did not do so through dramatic declarations. They did so through quiet consistency. Each morning they chose the same simple act. They began the day without carrying yesterday forward. This choice, repeated, reshaped identity. Others saw this change long before success appeared. They remarked that such men seemed calmer, steadier, and less burdened. They appeared as though they had put something down. In truth, they had put down the obligation to be who they were yesterday. This practice saves years of life that would otherwise be spent reliving the same emotional patterns. A man who begins each day under yesterday's weight must spend the day overcoming himself. A man who begins free moves directly into use. Over 10 years, the difference is enormous. Over 20, it is decisive. The gate of the morning is also the point at which identity is renewed. Identity is not fixed, it is practiced. Whatever you allow yourself to be upon waking becomes the character you carry into action. If you awaken as the one who failed, you act accordingly. If you awaken as the one who is beginning, you act differently. This is why starting fresh does not require belief. Belief follows practice. Practice does not follow belief. The mind accepts what is repeated at the gate and resists what is merely hoped for. Hope without repetition is fragile. Repetition without emotion is powerful. Here is where the first morning sentence becomes essential. It is not spoken to convince feeling. It is spoken to instruct habit. Habit is deaf to emotion but obedient to repetition. The sentence must therefore be simple, firm, and calm. A man who guards the gate might say inwardly, before movement begins, "I begin this day free from yesterday." These words are not an argument. They are a boundary. They inform the mind that yesterday does not hold authority here. Spoken daily, they retrain the subconscious to release the old pattern of resumption. At first, the mind may resist. It may attempt to return to familiar complaint or regret. This resistance is not failure. It is proof that habit is being interrupted. Calm repetition overcomes resistance without struggle. As this practice continues, mornings feel different, not dramatic, lighter. The body loosens, the breath deepens, thought feels less crowded. This is not imagination. It is the nervous system responding to a change in instruction. Others begin to notice as well. They may say you seem more present, less reactive, easier to speak with. They may not know why, but they feel the absence of yesterday in your manner. This absence makes room for cooperation. The man who begins each day as new is not careless of experience. He is liberated from it. He uses the past when it is useful and sets it aside when it is not. This selectivity is the mark of maturity. Many people fear that releasing the past means repeating mistakes. In truth, clinging to the past repeats them more reliably. Freedom allows learning. Repetition enforces error. The gate decides which occurs. If there is one discipline that saves the most years of life, it is this: refuse to awaken as the person you were required to be yesterday. Begin as the person you are choosing to become today. This choice, repeated, accumulates power. The morning gate does not care what you believe. It responds only to what you allow. Stand there deliberately. Admit only what serves the present. Deny passage to whatever belongs elsewhere. When this becomes habit, starting fresh no longer feels like effort. It feels natural. Yesterday loses its claim. Today stands on its own. And life, meeting a man who is not carrying old weight, responds with greater ease. This is the first work. Without it, nothing else endures. With it, renewal becomes possible not once, but daily. I wish now to take you deeper into the second discipline, for this is the point at which most people fail without ever realizing why. They believe they are beginning fresh, yet they allow one small thing to remain unchanged, the first inner statement they make to themselves upon waking. That single statement, repeated day after day, determines whether the morning truly belongs to the present or secretly belongs to the past. Every day begins with a sentence, whether spoken aloud or not. Most people do not choose this sentence. It arrives automatically, shaped by habit, memory, and fear. It may sound like pressure, such as I have too much to do. It may sound like judgment, such as I should be further along by now. Or it may sound like resignation, such as here we go again. Whatever its wording, this sentence becomes the governing instruction of the day. The mind does not argue with the first statement it hears, it obeys it. This is why mornings are so decisive. The subconscious is most receptive at the point of waking. It accepts repetition as truth, not because it is logical, but because it is familiar. Whoever supplies the first sentence supplies the direction. Most people assume that feeling determines thought. In truth, thought determines feeling. The first inner statement creates an emotional posture, and that posture shapes behavior. Behavior then invites circumstances that appear to confirm the original thought. Thus, the same day repeats itself with different details. Men of achievement understood this, though many could not have explained it in words. They knew that to change results, they had to change the governing thought at the start. They did not attempt to fight the day later. They instructed it early. Consider a man who awakens thinking, this will be difficult. He may not say it consciously, but he feels it. His body tightens, his breath shortens. His tone becomes guarded. Others respond accordingly. Difficulty meets him, not because the day was hostile, but because his first instruction prepared him for struggle. Now consider the same man who awakens with a different sentence, chosen deliberately. He does not deny that challenges may arise. He simply refuses to instruct his mind to expect strain. His body responds differently, his posture opens, His speech steadies. Others feel less resistance in him. The day unfolds under a different law. This is why starting fresh does not require willpower. Willpower applied later must fight the momentum already established. Starting fresh requires only one calm sentence spoken before momentum forms. That sentence does not need to be inspiring. It needs to be steady. Many people fail with affirmations because they treat them as encouragement rather than instruction. They speak too quickly, with too much effort, trying to feel something immediately. The subconscious does not respond to effort. It responds to consistency. A sentence repeated calmly every morning becomes law within the mind. Successful men often carried one governing sentence for years. They did not change it daily. They allowed it to sink deeply until it shaped their reflexes. This is why their confidence appeared natural rather than forced. It was practiced into place. Others noticed this before results appeared. They said such men seemed grounded, untroubled, or hard to shake. What they were sensing was not talent, but inner consistency. Consistency invites trust. Trust invites cooperation. Cooperation shortens the distance between effort and result. This practice saves years of life because it prevents emotional correction later. A man who begins the day with a wrong sentence spends hours undoing it. He argues with himself, tries to motivate himself, and repairs relationships strained by his early tension. A man who begins with the right sentence moves forward cleanly. Over 10 years, this difference compounds quietly. Over 20, it reshapes reputation. Over 30, it determines whether life feels heavy or workable. The sentence itself must be chosen carefully. It must not provoke argument within the mind. If it does, it will be rejected. It must feel neutral enough to be accepted, yet strong enough to direct. A governing sentence such as the following fulfills this requirement. Today begins new, and I move forward calmly. This sentence does not deny the past. It simply refuses to carry it. It does not promise ease. It promises order. Order is what the mind responds to most readily. Spoken slowly upon waking, this sentence interrupts old patterns without struggle. The mind may attempt to return to familiar complaint, but repetition weakens resistance. Within days, the sentence begins to feel natural. Within weeks, it becomes habitual. Within months, it becomes identity. Others will notice this identity shift long before success becomes visible. They will remark that you seem less rushed, less reactive, more deliberate. They will feel that you are not dragging yesterday into today's work. This makes cooperation easier and conflict less frequent. Many people believe they need new circumstances to start fresh. In truth, they need a new instruction. Circumstances respond to instruction over time. They do not respond to wishes. This is why repetition is essential. A single morning does not undo years of training, but daily repetition does. The mind is patient. It accepts whatever is repeated without argument. You may use this law against yourself or for yourself, but you cannot escape it. Men who understood this law saved themselves decades of struggle. They stopped waking up as prisoners of yesterday and began waking up as initiators of today. Their lives did not change overnight, but they changed direction permanently. This second discipline is therefore the hinge upon which freshness turns. Without it, the gate may be guarded, but the governing voice remains unchanged. With it, the day takes on a different authority. Choose your first sentence wisely. Speak it calmly. Repeat it faithfully. Let it become familiar. When it does, yesterday will lose its voice, and today will begin to answer a new instruction. This is how a fresh start ceases to be a hope and becomes a habit. I wish now to speak of the third discipline, for this is the point at which many sincere efforts to begin anew quietly collapse. A person may guard the morning gate and choose a governing sentence, yet still feel weighed down before the day has truly begun. The cause is subtle but powerful. It is the habit of carrying emotional debt forward, even when events themselves have passed. Emotional debt is not memory, it is unfinished reaction. It is the residue of anger not expressed, regret not released, disappointment not settled, or shame rehearsed inwardly long after its moment has ended. This debt does not announce itself as such. It disguises itself as responsibility, conscience, or realism. Yet its effect is always the same. It binds today to yesterday with invisible thread. Most people awaken not merely remembering what occurred, but feeling obligated to continue feeling what they felt. This obligation is never questioned. They assume it is natural. In truth, it is learned. Feeling, like thought, follows repetition. Whatever emotion is revisited repeatedly becomes familiar, and familiarity masquerades as necessity. Men and women who learn to begin fresh discover that the greatest burden is not circumstance, but the belief that they must carry yesterday's emotional tone into today. Once this belief is questioned, relief begins immediately. I have observed that men who rebuilt their lives did not do so by reliving their pain until it lost meaning. They did so by refusing to begin the day indebted to old emotion. They acknowledged what occurred, extracted its lesson, and then closed the account. This closing was not dramatic. It was deliberate. Emotional debt persists because it feels unfinished. The mind believes that by carrying it forward, resolution will eventually occur. In truth, repetition prevents resolution. A feeling does not complete its course when it is rehearsed daily. It completes when it is permitted to end. Many people fear that releasing emotional debt means excusing error or denying responsibility. It does not. Responsibility belongs to action, not to prolonged self-punishment. Punishment does not correct behavior. Understanding does. Once understanding is gained, debt has no purpose. This is why so many people begin each day tired before effort begins. They are carrying feelings that no longer serve instruction. The body responds to emotional debt as though danger were present. Muscles tighten, breath shortens, thought narrows. Peace is impossible under such conditions. Men of achievement learn to close emotional accounts daily. They did not allow irritation to remain overnight. They did not rehearse disappointment in the morning. They understood that clarity required emotional neutrality. Neutrality restored strength. Others noticed this quality in them. They seemed unburdened, even when facing difficulty. They were not indifferent. They were free. Freedom from emotional debt made them easier to work with and more reliable under pressure. This practice alone saves years of life. A man who carries emotional debt spends his days managing feeling rather than applying effort. He exhausts himself inwardly and wonders why progress feels slow. Over 10 years, this exhaustion compounds. Over 20, it hardens into temperament. Over 30, it defines outlook. To begin the day without emotional debt requires one simple act: refusal. Not refusal to feel, but refusal to continue feeling what has already served its purpose. This refusal is not suppression. Suppression forces feeling inward where it festers. Refusal allows feeling to pass. Here is where a deliberate morning sentence becomes essential again, not to inspire, but to release. A sentence such as the following serves this function: I release all feeling that belongs to yesterday. Spoken calmly, this sentence instructs the subconscious that the account is closed. It does not demand forgetting. It permits completion. Completion restores calm. At first, the mind may resist. It may argue that release is premature or undeserved. This argument is habit speaking. Calm repetition weakens it. The subconscious responds to authority stated without anger. As this practice continues, mornings feel cleaner, emotional noise fades, the body responds with ease. Thought becomes less cluttered. This is not imagination. It is physiological response to emotional neutrality. Others will notice as well. You will appear less defensive, less self-critical, less reactive. People will feel that you are present rather than preoccupied. This presence invites cooperation. Many people believe forgiveness must be earned through suffering. This belief prolongs suffering unnecessarily. Forgiveness, rightly understood, is permission to stop repeating pain. Nothing more, nothing less. The man who closes emotional accounts daily becomes resilient. He does not carry wounds forward. He learns from them and sets them down. This ability distinguishes maturity from mere endurance. This discipline also restores joy in small things. Emotional debt dulls perception. Release sharpens it. Colors seem clearer. Conversation feels lighter. The day no longer feels like a continuation of burden, but a field of possibility. This is why starting fresh is not an act of will, but an act of release. Will strains. Release frees. The difference is decisive. If there is one thing that prevents freshness from becoming permanent, it is the refusal to let emotional debt end. If there is one thing that makes renewal effortless, it is the daily closing of accounts. Begin each day owing nothing emotionally, not to others, not to yourself, not to yesterday. When you do, the day meets you differently. This third discipline completes the inner preparation. The gate is guarded, the governing sentence is chosen, the emotional ledger is cleared. Now the day is truly free to begin. Without this, the past always finds another way in. With it, renewal becomes natural rather than forced. This is the quiet work that makes freshness possible and lasting. I wish now to speak of the fourth discipline, for this is where renewal ceases to be, merely the absence of yesterday, and becomes the deliberate formation of who you are today. Many people believe identity is fixed by history, talent, or circumstance. This belief alone prevents a fresh start from lasting. Identity, in truth, is not inherited each morning, it is reaffirmed each morning. What you reaffirm becomes what you express. A man does not live according to who he once was. He lives according to who he repeatedly tells himself he is now. This telling need not be dramatic. It need not be confident. It need only be consistent. The mind accepts identity the same way it accepts habit, through repetition without argument. Most people awaken and unknowingly recite an old description of themselves. They may not use words, but the meaning is clear. The one who struggles, the one who is late, the one who disappoints, the one who must prove himself. This description has been practiced so often that it feels like truth. It is not truth. It is training. Men and women who begin fresh daily understand that identity must be renewed deliberately, just as a fire must be tended if it is to continue burning. They do not rely on yesterday's sense of self. They choose today's. I have observed that men who rose beyond their origins did so by quietly practicing a new self-concept long before the world agreed with it. They did not demand recognition. They simply behaved in alignment with the identity they were rehearsing inwardly. The world eventually adjusted. Consider a man born into modest means who later carried great responsibility. He did not awaken each morning reminding himself of limitation. He reminded himself of capability. At first, this reminder felt unfamiliar. With repetition, it felt natural. With time, it became unquestioned. This is why repetition remains essential. Identity is not changed by inspiration. Inspiration fades. Identity is changed by daily instruction. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is imagined and what is lived. It responds to what is repeated. Others notice identity before achievement. They sense confidence, steadiness, and direction in those who have claimed themselves inwardly. Such individuals are treated differently. They are entrusted earlier. They are resisted less. They appear to belong in places they have not yet arrived. Many people attempt to change behavior without changing identity. This effort is exhausting and rarely sustained. Behavior follows identity naturally. When identity shifts, behavior aligns without force. This is why starting fresh each morning must include a renewal of self-definition, not a boast, not a denial of reality, but a simple statement of who you are choosing to be today, regardless of what yesterday required of you. A man who continues to identify as his former failures will recreate them. A man who identifies as one who is learning will progress. A man who identifies as one who is capable will act with steadiness even before success appears. Here is where a chosen sentence again performs its quiet work. A sentence such as, "Today I act as the person I am becoming." This sentence does not demand proof, it instructs conduct. Conduct repeated becomes character. Character repeated becomes destiny. Spoken calmly each morning, this sentence shifts the inner posture. The body responds, the voice changes. Decisions are made with slightly more confidence. Others feel this change and respond accordingly. This practice saves years of life that would otherwise be spent waiting for permission to change. Many people wait for circumstances to grant them a new identity. They wait to feel successful before acting confidently, worthy before acting decisively, capable before acting responsibly. This waiting wastes decades. The man who renews identity daily does not wait. He practices being who he intends to be. He does not force results. He allows consistency to do its work. Others may challenge this new identity at first. They may recall who you were. They may doubt who you are becoming. This resistance is not failure. It is evidence that change is occurring. Consistency outlasts opinion. Over 10 years, daily renewal of identity reshapes reputation. Over 20, it reshapes opportunity. Over 30, it reshapes life itself. The man who practices becoming does not remain static. This discipline also removes the burden of perfection. You are not claiming to have arrived. You are claiming direction. Direction is enough. The mind relaxes when direction is clear. Many people fear that choosing a new identity is dishonest. In truth, clinging to an old one long after it has ceased to serve is the greater falsehood. Growth requires new language. This is why men of vision often spoke of themselves in terms of purpose rather than position. They were not lying. They were rehearsing reality into form. When identity is renewed each morning, freshness becomes stable. You no longer need dramatic change to feel new. You feel new because you are not repeating the same inner description. This fourth discipline completes the shift from release to creation. Yesterday has been denied entry. The governing sentence has been chosen. Emotional debt has been cleared. Now identity is claimed. From this point forward, the day does not merely begin fresh. It begins directed. And a directed day, repeated, builds a directed life. I wish now to speak of the fifth discipline, for this is where many sincere attempts at renewal quietly unravel, not because the work has failed, but because urgency is mistaken for strength. A person may guard the gate, choose a governing sentence, release emotional debt, and renew identity, yet still begin the day hurried, pressured, and internally rushed. This single habit is enough to undo much of the freshness that has already been established. Urgency is not natural, it is learned. No child awakens believing there is not enough time to exist. Urgency is taught through repetition, through watching others rush, through being corrected harshly, through living too long under pressure without pause. Eventually, urgency becomes the default morning posture. It feels responsible. It feels necessary. In truth, it is destructive. When a man begins the day in urgency, his mind narrows before it expands. Thought becomes shallow. Judgment becomes reactive. He moves quickly, but not accurately. Speed replaces clarity, and mistakes multiply quietly. By the end of the day, he is exhausted not from effort, but from friction. Men of enduring achievement learned something different. They understood that haste steals more time than delay ever could. They began their days deliberately, even when demands were great. They did not confuse speed with effectiveness. They valued order over motion. I have observed that those who lived long and useful lives did not allow the morning to bully them. They did not wake up running inwardly. They established rhythm before action. This rhythm protected their judgment throughout the day. Urgency disguises itself as necessity. It says, if I do not rush, I will fall behind. In truth, rushing creates the very errors that cause delay. A hurried decision often requires correction. A calm decision often stands. Over 10 years, the difference between these two habits is staggering. Others sense urgency immediately. A hurried person interrupts, overlooks detail, and carries tension into conversation. People feel it. They withdraw, resist, or become guarded. Cooperation slows. The hurried person then rushes more, believing resistance is the problem, when urgency is the cause. Now observe the person who begins the day without urgency. He does not move slowly, he moves in sequence. He knows what belongs to the moment and what does not. He does not attempt to live the entire day at once. Others feel safe around him. They trust his timing. They respond willingly. This posture alone saves years of life. A man who rushes daily spends his evenings recovering. He sleeps poorly. He awakens tense. The cycle repeats. A man who begins calmly carries less strain into the body. His energy lasts. His work compounds. Many people believe calm means lack of ambition. This is false. Calm removes resistance from ambition. Ambition without calm burns itself out. Ambition with calm builds steadily. This is why starting fresh requires the release of urgency, not the accumulation of motivation. Motivation excites, urgency pressures, calm directs. Here is where another deliberate morning sentence becomes essential. A sentence such as, I begin this day without haste, and I move in proper order. These words are not a wish, they are a correction. Spoken calmly, they instruct the mind to abandon its learned panic and return to rhythm. At first, the mind may resist. It may insist that rushing is necessary. This insistence is habit speaking. Calm repetition weakens it. The subconscious mind accepts new instruction when it is repeated without strain. As this practice continues, mornings feel wider, breath deepens, thought organizes itself naturally. You feel less driven and more directed. This is not passivity. It is efficiency restored. Others will notice the change. They may say you seem more present, more reliable, less scattered. They may trust you with responsibility sooner because you do not create confusion around yourself. This discipline saves not only time, but health. Urgency taxes the body relentlessly. Calm preserves it. Many people age not from years, but from strain. Removing urgency removes much of that strain. Over 20 years, this difference preserves clarity. Over 30, it preserves usefulness. The man who does not rush himself remains capable longer. Urgency also interferes with joy. A rushed mind cannot appreciate progress. It leaps from task to task without completion. Calm allows satisfaction. Satisfaction restores energy. Energy fuels consistent effort. This is why men who achieve much often appear unhurried even when busy. They have learned that speed belongs to the body, but order belongs to the mind. The mind must lead. When urgency is released, the day begins to respond differently. Delays feel less threatening. Interruptions feel manageable. You adapt without agitation. This adaptability is the mark of mastery. Starting fresh, therefore, is not only about what you release and what you claim, it is about how you move. Movement governed by calm accumulates power. Movement governed by urgency dissipates it. If there is one habit that quietly destroys freshness more than any other, it is the habit of beginning the day rushed. If there is one habit that preserves freshness, it is beginning deliberately. Release urgency each morning. Choose order. Let calm set the pace. The day will follow the rhythm you establish. This fifth discipline deepens renewal from an inner state into an outer manner. Freshness is no longer fragile. It becomes durable because it is no longer being hurried away. And when freshness endures, progress becomes inevitable. I wish now to speak of the sixth discipline, for this is the quiet force that makes all the previous work endure. Without it, renewal remains occasional. With it, renewal becomes automatic. This discipline is the intelligent use of repetition, not as enthusiasm, but as law. Many people repeat words occasionally and wonder why nothing changes. They do not understand that repetition works, whether one believes in it or not, and that it works most powerfully when it is calm, steady, and unremarkable. Everything the mind accepts as reality has been repeated. Fear is repeated, doubt is repeated, self-criticism is repeated. These habits did not arrive by accident. They were practiced. What is practiced becomes familiar. What is familiar becomes unquestioned. What is unquestioned governs conduct. This sequence explains nearly every life pattern. Men and women who begin fresh daily do not rely on sudden insight. Insight fades. They rely on daily instruction. They repeat the same sentences, the same attitudes, the same inner posture until the mind stops resisting and begins cooperating. Cooperation is the turning point. Many people fail here because they expect repetition to feel exciting. It does not. It feels ordinary. The subconscious mind is not persuaded by excitement. It is persuaded by familiarity. A sentence spoken once may inspire. A sentence spoken daily becomes command. I have observed that men of achievement often carried a small number of governing thoughts for decades. They did not change them to avoid boredom. They allowed them to sink so deeply that action followed automatically. This is why their confidence appeared natural. It was trained. Others saw only the outcome. They did not see the years of quiet repetition that shaped reflex, posture, and tone. They mistook habit for talent. Talent is often only habit practiced early and faithfully. Repetition also explains why people return to old patterns even after moments of clarity. A single insight does not outweigh years of practice. Practice always wins. This is not discouraging. It is empowering. It means the same law that built limitation can build freedom. To start fresh, permanently, the morning sentence must be repeated until it no longer feels chosen. It must feel inevitable. When that happens, yesterday loses its influence completely. The mind no longer reaches backward. It reaches forward by habit. This discipline saves more years than any other because it prevents drift. Drift is the silent return to old thinking when attention relaxes. Repetition replaces drift with direction. Direction maintained becomes destiny. Others begin to notice that you no longer fluctuate emotionally. You are not enthusiastic one day and discouraged the next. You are steady. This steadiness inspires confidence in others. They trust consistency more than brilliance. Repetition also removes the need for constant self-correction. A man who repeats the right instruction daily does not need to repair himself continually. He begins each day already aligned. This economy of effort compounds quietly. Many people resist repetition because it feels mechanical. They wish to feel motivated instead. Motivation is unreliable. Repetition is faithful. The man who waits for motivation waits long. The man who repeats acts daily. Here is where the discipline becomes simple but exacting. Choose one sentence that represents renewal. Speak it every morning without variation. Do not improve it. Do not embellish it. Allow its power to come from constancy. A sentence such as, "I begin anew today," calmly and deliberately. This sentence does not promise anything. It instructs posture. Spoken daily, it retrains the mind to expect renewal as normal. At first, repetition feels conscious. Later, it becomes automatic. Eventually, it becomes identity. Identity no longer requires repetition, it expresses it. Others will remark that you seem dependable, less reactive, more centered. This perception opens doors that effort alone cannot. People trust those who are consistent inwardly. Repetition also protects you during difficulty. When circumstances attempt to pull the mind backward, habit pulls it forward. This protection is invaluable. It prevents collapse under pressure. Over 10 years, repetition prevents relapse. Over 20, it establishes mastery. Over 30, it defines character. The man who repeats renewal daily does not need rescue. He renews himself. Many people underestimate how much life is lost, not to catastrophe, but to return to old thinking, old feeling, old posture. Repetition interrupts return. This is why the fresh start must be practiced even when things are going well. Especially then, success does not eliminate habit. It reveals it. Repetition ensures success does not undo itself. This sixth discipline completes the structure. The gate is guarded. The sentence is chosen. Emotional debt is released. Identity is renewed. Urgency is dissolved. Now repetition locks all of this into place. From this point forward, freshness is no longer fragile. It is reinforced daily. It becomes the default state rather than the exception. The man who understands repetition stops searching for change and begins practicing it. And practice, not hope, is what reshapes life. This is the quiet power that makes a fresh start permanent. I wish now to speak of the seventh and final discipline, for this is the point where all that has been practiced becomes permanent, and where a fresh start is no longer something you attempt, but something you live. This discipline is the daily renewal that removes the need to begin again, because the mind no longer falls backward into confusion or strain. At this stage, freshness ceases to be an event and becomes a condition. Most people believe that starting fresh is something one does only after failure, exhaustion, or disappointment. They wait until life forces them to reset. This belief ensures that renewal is rare and costly. Men and women who master life learn something quieter and far more powerful. Renewal is maintenance. It is not rescue. It is the daily act of keeping the mind clear so that collapse never becomes necessary. When renewal is practiced only in crisis, it feels dramatic and difficult. When renewal is practiced daily, it feels ordinary and effortless. This is the difference between repair and preservation. Repair consumes time. Preservation saves it. I have observed that men of long usefulness did not rely on dramatic turning points. They relied on small daily resets, so consistent that decline never gained momentum. They corrected direction early, before error compounded. They rested the mind before fatigue hardened into discouragement. This is how long lives of clarity are built. At this stage, the morning no longer feels like a battle to overcome yesterday. Yesterday has lost its authority. The mind awakens already oriented toward order. Thought does not scatter. Emotion does not surge. Identity does not wobble. Freshness is present because it was never allowed to leave. Others sense this immediately. A person who lives in daily renewal does not carry heaviness into conversation. He does not speak as though he is recovering from life. He speaks as though he is participating in it. This manner attracts cooperation without effort. Such a person is often described as reliable, grounded, or steady. These words are not compliments of temperament. They are observations of maintenance. Life trusts those who maintain themselves. At this point, affirmations are no longer tools. They are reminders. They no longer feel foreign. They feel familiar. The mind no longer resists them because they agree with lived experience. Repetition has done its work. The final affirmation at this stage is not meant to change anything. It is meant to seal what is already established. A sentence such as, "I renew myself daily and freshness remains with me." Spoken calmly, this sentence does not create renewal. It acknowledges it. Acknowledgement strengthens permanence. This stage saves more years of life than any other because it prevents decline before it begins. Most wasted years are not lost suddenly. They erode slowly through neglect of the inner state. Daily renewal interrupts erosion. The man who lives this way does not fear losing momentum. Momentum is no longer emotional, it is structural. Even when motivation fades, direction remains. Even when difficulty appears, clarity does not vanish. Others may ask how you remain calm, clear, or steady. You will not have a dramatic answer. You will simply know that you do not allow confusion to accumulate. You clear it daily. You do not allow pressure to harden. You release it early. You do not allow identity to drift. You renew it. This is why freshness becomes permanent here. Nothing is left unattended long enough to decay. Many people live as though the mind requires constant repair. In truth, it requires consistent care. Care is quiet. Care is daily. Care is effective. At this stage, starting fresh no longer feels like effort. It feels like returning home. You recognize the state of clarity as your natural condition rather than a temporary achievement. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes workable. Problems still arise, but they do not pile up. Emotion still appears, but it does not linger. Thought still wanders, but it returns quickly. The difference between those who endure and those who thrive is not strength. It is renewal. Strength wears down. Renewal restores. When renewal is practiced daily, hope does not need to be rebuilt. Confidence does not need to be summoned. Peace does not need to be chased. They are present because nothing has been allowed to displace them. This is the fulfillment of the promise made at the beginning, not a dramatic fresh start, but a permanent one. A life in which yesterday no longer intrudes and tomorrow no longer intimidates. You awaken, you renew, and you proceed, day after day, year after year. And in this way, freshness becomes not something you seek, but something you keep. This is the final discipline. I will close this work with a long epilogue, not as an afterthought, but as a settling of the entire idea into the mind, where it may remain long after the words themselves have passed. What follows is not new instruction. It is perspective, earned perspective meant to help you understand why the simple act of beginning fresh each morning is not a minor habit, but a life-preserving discipline. Most people never lose their lives in dramatic ways. They do not fail loudly. They fade quietly. They wake up tired, repeat familiar thoughts, carry familiar emotions, and move through familiar days until years have passed without direction. When they finally pause to look back, they do not ask, "Why did this happen?" They ask, "When did this happen?" Time did not betray them. Habit did. The greatest mistake people make about change is believing it must be large, emotional, or sudden. They wait for a powerful moment to arrive, a turning point, a crisis, a revelation. In the meantime, they continue waking up as the same person, speaking the same sentences inwardly, carrying the same weight, and rehearsing the same identity. Nothing changes because nothing has been instructed to change. The morning is where instruction occurs. You may now see why the beginning of the day is so important. It is not because the morning is magical. It is because the mind is undefended. It has not yet resumed its arguments. It has not yet reassembled its fears. It is listening. Whatever you tell it then becomes the standard by which the rest of the day is measured. This is why repeating the right words every morning allows a person to start fresh, not symbolically, but practically. The mind is not persuaded by hope. It is trained by repetition. When the same instruction is given calmly, day after day, the mind stops questioning it. It accepts it as reality. Many people believe they are trapped by their past. In truth, they are trapped by their morning habits. They rehearse the past so faithfully that it appears permanent. The moment rehearsal stops, permanence dissolves. Consider how many years are lost to emotional correction alone. A person begins the day tense, rushed, or discouraged. He spends hours trying to motivate himself, calm himself, explain himself, or recover from his own reactions. By the time the day ends, he is exhausted not from useful effort, but from inner friction. Multiply this by 10 years, and you begin to see where life goes. Now consider the alternative. A person begins the day deliberately, he releases yesterday, he chooses his governing sentence. He renews his identity, he dissolves urgency, he repeats this process daily until it becomes automatic. He no longer spends energy correcting himself, his effort goes directly into use. This is how 10 years are saved. This is how 20 years are reclaimed. This is how 30 years are preserved. Not by doing more, but by wasting less. Waste is the true enemy of life. Waste of emotion, waste of thought, waste of attention, waste of reaction. None of these produce value, yet they consume enormous amounts of time. When waste is removed, progress accelerates without strain. You may also notice that peace, when practiced this way, is not fragile. It does not shatter under difficulty. It remains present because it was not borrowed from circumstance. It was installed through habit. Peace that is installed does not leave easily. Others will notice this long before you do. They will remark that you seem steadier, clearer, and less burdened. They may not know why. You may not even try to explain it. Explanation is unnecessary. Results speak quietly. Opportunities will begin to arrive differently as well. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but more consistently. People will trust you sooner. Conversations will open more naturally. Resistance will lessen. This is not because you have changed the world. It is because you are no longer carrying yesterday into today's encounters. One of the great misunderstandings about starting fresh is the belief that it erases responsibility. It does not. It removes unnecessary burden. Responsibility carried without emotional debt feels lighter, clearer, and more purposeful. Responsibility carried with debt becomes punishment. This is why men and women of long usefulness learned to clear themselves daily. They did not allow pressure to accumulate. They did not allow identity to drift. They did not allow urgency to dictate rhythm. They maintained themselves the way one maintains valuable equipment with regular care, not emergency repair. If there is one truth I wish to leave with you, it is this: life does not need to be restarted. The mind does. When the mind is renewed daily, life follows suit naturally. You may miss a morning. That will happen. Do not condemn yourself. Condemnation restores the very patterns you are learning to dissolve. Simply return. Return again and again. Repetition forgives mistakes by outlasting them. You may also feel at times that nothing is changing. That feeling is common. Change that lasts often feels quiet while it is forming. Do not measure progress emotionally. Measure it structurally. Are you beginning the day differently? Are you speaking differently inwardly? Are you releasing sooner? Are you reacting less? These are the true indicators. At some point, you will realize that the day no longer feels like something to survive. It feels like something to enter. That realization will not arrive with ceremony. It will feel ordinary. That is how you will know it is real. The person who begins fresh each morning does not become immune to difficulty. He becomes resilient. He bends without breaking. He adapts without collapsing. He moves forward without dragging the past behind him. This is not optimism, it is discipline. And discipline, when practiced gently and consistently, becomes freedom. Freedom from old stories, freedom from emotional debt, freedom from urgency, freedom from repetition that no longer serves. When this freedom becomes habitual, the question of starting fresh no longer arises. Freshness is already present. It is maintained daily, quietly, without effort. You wake, you renew, you proceed. That is all. And it is enough